Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum everyone. Today's topic is about the zakah according to the Quran. In the Quran, we see that the word zakah is often accompanied with the word salah. God says, Aqimu as-salah wa atu az-zakah. Aqimu as-salah means you shall uphold the salah. And I covered the topic of salah in another video. And I mentioned that the word salah means to closely follow behind something or the adherence. And in the Quranic context, salah is in regards, or the adherence is in regards to the adherence to God's laws. In other verses, we see that the adherence is also referring to the sessions for remembrance of God, which is typically done via the Quranic revelation, or the Quranic recitation, I should say. And we also see that there is a salah that is with the bonds with other humans. But what does atu az-zakah mean? Atu az-zakah means to bring forth the zakah. And so we need to understand what zakah means in the Quranic context. Let's begin. The first thing we would like to do is address this idea. Does the Quran indicate for us that the zakah is an obligatory charity as commonly understood in traditional Islam? In traditional Islam, we are told that the obligatory charity, the zakah, is 2.5%, that is to be distributed once a year. But let's take a look in the Quran. Let's take a look at Surah 23, verse 4. God says, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِلزَّكَاةِ فَاعِلُونَ, and those, they for the zakat, are doers. It's interesting that God here is using the Arabic word fa'ilun, or doers. This is because if zakah is exclusively about paying money, God would not have used this particular term. He would have used a term like payers. But he says they are doers, so it's an action-based thing, and it tends to give us an understanding that zakah has a broader aspect than just payment. God also says in Surah 92 verse 18, الَّذِي يُؤْتِي مَالَهُ يَتَزَكَّى, the one who gives his money يَتَزَكَّى. So here we see that there is an association of money with zakah, but this verse does not in any way teach us that it's an obligatory charity, but rather it's just a charity, an optional charity. Instead, let's take a look at Surah 9 verse 60, where God does talk about the obligatory charity. God says, إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها والمؤلفة قلوبهم وفي الرقاب والغارمين وفي سبيل الله وابن السبيل فريضة من الله. Indeed, the sadaqat are for the poor and the needy and those who work to collect them and those whose hearts have been united, and to free the slaves and those in debt and in the cause of God and the wayfarer, a faridah from God. Here God talks about something called sadaqat, okay? And he says that the sadaqat are a faridah. Faridah in Arabic means an obligation. So if we are talking about specifically an obligatory charity, the sadaqat are the obligatory charity according to the Quran, not the zakat. Okay, so sadaqat comes from the root sadaqa, which means truth. Basically, you are giving an obligatory charity to demonstrate your truthfulness as a believer. And God says that the sadaqat, and he gives us a distribution of them, and he says that this distribution is a faridah from God, an obligation. And again, the sadaqat are the obligation, not the zakat. So this is important to understand. Zakat, according to the Quran, has nothing to do with an obligatory charity, but the sadaqat are the obligatory charities. And this is why God does talk about Surah 9 verse 103. He says, take from their money a sadaqatan, to purify them and to zakkihim with it. خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ صَدَقَةً تُطَهِّرُهُمْ وَتُزَكِّيهِمْ بِهَا. So God ordained the Prophet to take the sadaqat from the people, okay, the sadaqat are the obligatory charities, to purify them and to zakkihim with it. So the zakat is the result of the sadaqat. Okay, it's not the sadaqat, but it's the result of the sadaqat. So in the next slide, we're going to talk specifically and identify what zakat is. The term zakah comes from the root word zakawa, and it means to increase of a pre-existing thing. And in this video, I'm going to translate this term as augmentation. So it's a type of growth. But this really did strike my curiosity as to what is the difference between the term zakah and riba, because riba also means a growth. And we all know what riba is, right? It's referring to the usury. And in Surah 30 verse 39, God uses both terms, riba and zakah. So let's find out what is the difference between the two. God says, وَمَا آتَيْتُم مِّن رِبَا لِيَرْبُوا فِي أَمْوَالِ النَّاسِ فَلَا يَرْبُوا عِندَ اللَّهِ وَمَا آتَيْتُم مِّن زَكَاةٍ تُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَ اللَّهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُضْعِفُونَ. And what you brought forth of growth, so they grow in the monies of the people, it will not grow at God. And any augmentation that you have placed seeking the face of God, then those will be multiplied. So here it becomes quite evident. God is using the term riba in the negative connotation, whereas zakah is used in a positive connotation. This indicates for us that although both of these terms do refer to a growth, riba has more of a negative connotation, at least from a spiritual aspect, whereas zakah has more of a positive and a connotation. So now that we understand that zakah means augmentation, it's a growth and specifically a positive spiritual aspect of growth, let's find out exactly how zakah is obtained according to the Quran. We go to Surah 20 verses 75 through 76. God says, "And he who comes to him as a believer doing good works, for those will be the highest ranks, gardens of delight with rivers flowing beneath them, abiding therein. Such is the reward of he who is augmented." Note this last phrase, such is the reward of he who is augmented. So God is specifying who this augmented person is. In Arabic it reads, وَذَلِكَ جَزَاءُ مَنْ تَزَكَّى. So God is specifying this person as an augmented person. And God describes this person as one who believes in God and does good works. So this is what zakah is according to the Quran. According to this verse, zakah is obtained by believing in God and doing good works. Just like salah, zakah is an umbrella term, and God tells us that zakah is simply believing in God and doing good works. It's basically the application of believing in God, and it's doing good works. And this is why the zakah is not limited to just payment of money, which is part of doing good works. Any form of doing good works, that is part of zakah. And this is why we go to Surah 2 verse 151, for example, where God says, "We have sent a messenger to you from among yourselves to recite our revelations to you and augments you and teaches you the book and the wisdom." So the messenger here is augmenting us. How? By reciting the revelations of God, and he is enhancing our belief in him and enhancing our doing good works by doing good works. So this is the augmentation that is obtained via the Quran. Let's take some more verses and see how this understanding, this umbrella understanding, applies in the Quran. So now that we know that zakah means augmentation or the positive spiritual aspect of growth, and it's obtained by believing in God and doing good works, let's see if we can plug in this understanding into the Quranic verses. Now note, I didn't quote every single verse of the Quran, but I am going to quote a good handful of them, and we can see how this term is utilized throughout the scripture. We go to Surah 79 verses 17 through 18, where Moses is facing Pharaoh. God told him, "Go to Pharaoh, for he has transgressed. Tell him, would you not be augmented?" So Moses wasn't asking Pharaoh to pay an obligatory charity. He told him, would you not be augmented? Would you not believing in God and doing good works? Again, it's a spiritual positive aspect of growth, and this refers, and this can be obtained by believing in God and doing good works. Surah 80 verse 1 through 3, he frowned and turned away. This is the prophet. He frowned and turned away when the blind one came to him. And what makes you know? Perhaps he is seeking to be augmented. Yazakka. Again, it's not an obligatory charity. He is seeking to be augmented. He wants to spiritually grow. How? By believing in God and doing good works. We go to Surah 87 verse 14. God says, successful is the one who augmented tazakka. How? By believing in God and doing good works. Surah 24 verse 30, tell the believing men to lower their gaze and keep covered their private parts, for that is more augmenting for them, azka for them. So again, this is to demonstrate their belief in God and doing good works. We go to Surah 24 verse 28. But if you do not find anyone in them, the homes, then do not enter until you are given permission. And if you are told, go back, then go back, for it is more augmenting for you. Here we are demonstrating our augmentation, our growth, our spiritual growth. How? By believing in God and doing good works. One more verse, Surah 2 verse 174. Surely those who conceal what God has sent down of the book, and they purchase with it a cheap price, they will not eat in their bellies except the fire, and God will not speak to them on the day of resurrection, nor will he augment them, yuzakkihim, and they will have a painful retribution. So God is not going to spiritually increase their growth because they did not believe in God nor do good works. So as we can see, by simply understanding that zakat is more of a general umbrella term referring to the belief in God and specifically doing the general aspect of righteous works, this is what zakat is according to the Quran. To conclude, we often see that the word zakat is accompanied with the word salah. God says, aqimu as-salah, uphold the adherence. He then says, atu az-zakah, bring forth the augmentation. The adherence is to the adherence of God's laws, whereas bringing forth the augmentation is a demonstration of believing in God and doing righteous works. Think of it this way, the zakah is to demonstrate your adherence to God's laws. It's the societal contribution of your adherence to God's laws by believing in God and doing righteous works. It is not limited to payment of money. It is any form of righteous works that contributes to our society. This is what zakat is according to the Quran. Wassalamu alaikum.